Good morning. It is March 24th, 2020. A lot of people are stuck at home right now. Not so much to do except for be online and watching videos about useless things or learning things, but partially to keep myself from going stir crazy and partially to hopefully help someone out there if they come across this video. I decided to do a little bit of recording in regards to the 4 basic rules, the 4 universal rules of gun safety. And in some places you'll run into a 5th one or a 6th one, and they sometimes vary about which one they are, about what they want you to do, but pretty much universally in owner's manuals, posted online, posted at gun ranges, you're going to see 4 universal rules in certain terms, one way or another, and I wanted to try to explain those as best as I can for my own reiteration, for my own edification, and if you happen to be one of the many people out there that are one of the first-time firearm owners since this worldwide pandemic has started, maybe this will help you in lieu of being able to actually go out and get training. So, first I'm going to go down the rules and state them as simply as I can. Then I'm going to go back to the top of the list and I am going to explain them and give demonstration to them as best as I can. The first rule: assume every handgun, every rifle, every shotgun, every firearm that you run into is loaded. Second, don't place your finger, any finger, on the trigger until you are ready to fire. Third, do not point a firearm at anything you are not willing to destroy. And fourth, be aware of your target and what is behind it. And those are the 4 universal rules. Assume every gun is loaded. When I say assume loaded, I would also add to that, assume every gun is both loaded, chambered, and if you pull the trigger, it will fire a round. That is the fear there, is running into a gun that you don't know if it's actually loaded and then pulling the trigger and finding out the wrong way. Moving on to number 2, do not place your finger on the trigger until you are ready to fire or you have made the decision to fire the weapon. Now, I'm going to pull out a gun for this, and the reason I'm wearing white is hopefully it will contrast very well with what I'm holding. I do not have the best lighting, I am sorry. This is a Glock 19, and just for safety purposes to show, you may not be able to see too well, but there are no rounds in the magazine. Check the slide, nothing's there. And you can see the white through here. Hi. And do that just to drop the pin. So, do not place the finger on the trigger until you are ready to fire. Some will interpret this as the trigger only. I'm gonna, well, can't do it that way. This way you can actually see the trigger a little bit better. Some will say, don't put your finger on the trigger. But I would suggest, do not put your finger on the trigger, inside of the trigger well, which is just a name for the area around the trigger, and do not put it on the trigger guard until you are ready to fire. Some people might have long enough fingers. I really can't get a grip up here much different than my normal hand stance. So what do you do with the finger? Right along this top part of the gun, you could put your hand like this. From the other side, you can't even see it. There's a safe place to put it. You can pick the gun up. You can manipulate it however you need to in order to check it. So, number 3, never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to destroy. Destroy is kind of an all-encompassing term instead of saying kill, because you can shoot guns at TVs, at lamps, at cars, and you're not technically killing them, you're destroying them. So it's just kind of an all-inclusive language. And a lot of time you will hear this called either flagging, muzzle covering, but the point is that where the barrel is, this round part that shoots out the bullet, do not point that at anything you're not willing to destroy. Finally, be aware of your target and what is behind it. This comes after you have made the decision to fire. Once you have decided to move your finger from, say, this position down to the position that you are ready to fire, be aware of your target and what is beyond or behind it, and I would even say around it, because you are responsible for every bullet that exits this gun until it has stopped. And by stopped, I mean the cessation of momentum, whole law of physics, movement has ceased. And the reason why we say target and beyond it is because bullets don't just hit people and stop. They don't just hit walls and stop. A bullet, depending on the caliber, depending on the thickness of the object, depending on multiple factors, can penetrate through people, through walls, even through certain densities of metal, and go past it. So in a self-defense scenario, you have someone coming at you, you pull to shoot, and it just so happens that there are people on the other side of the street. You are responsible. If you fire, the bullet goes through that person and hits someone else on the other side. I wanted to tack on something to the end of this video, and it involves the first rule. Always assume that every handgun, every gun, shotgun, everything is loaded. And since I mostly am familiar with pistols, I wanted to give a demonstration on checking the firearm. Now, you already saw me do it when I was discussing the rule earlier, but this It's my Glock 19. It's a Gen 4. Nothing unique about this other than my sights are different, and there may be some scratches and bumps from where I'm a dingus sometimes. But this, and not flagging myself with it, is the other side. The other side is going to be a little bit more unique because you're going to see this part right here. That is the mag release. And this is the slide hold, the slide stop. Depending on the company that makes your gun, they will call it different things. Different people call it different things. Mostly, it means the same, serves the same purpose. So, I would hope that if you have bought the gun, that you're learning about it. Read the full manual, please. Even if it seems like it's repeating itself, please read the whole thing. You'll even see the universal rules in there. Read the manual because it will tell you things about your gun that you may not otherwise know, that you might not know even if you have been around that particular gun before, you've seen it before. I'm showing this side of the gun, and I'm going to kind of come off of camera here and try to highlight parts of the gun. As I said before, assume it is loaded, which would mean there are bullets in the magazine. Assume that it is chambered, which would mean there is a round inside of the gun in the barrel that if you pulled the trigger, it would fire. So if we have to assume that, and we don't know, we have to go about a certain process to figure it out. First of all, a mag release. This is going to be different on different guns. A Glock, it's a little button where right-handed people have it easy because it is on your right hand on the thumb. They have developed Glocks, and you can actually flip that, but you need to find that button right there, press it, release the mag. There's not actually anything in this one because I'm just demonstrating. Once the mag is gone, you need to make sure there's nothing within the chamber. Now, some guns, you can tell if things or rounds are in the chamber because there will be places on the gun where they have built-in safeties that you can see around, or that a certain part of the gun will protrude to show there is something in the chamber. However, you can't trust an outside visual to tell you the truth about what may be inside. So, after you have dropped the mag, and now I'm going to actually take hold of the gun itself. Once again, I have my finger over here. You rack the slide, and you can even rack it again just to make sure. Now, what you'll also want to do, if I get some light on there, at my thumb, we talked about the slide stop or the slide release, whatever you want to call it. When you pull that back, you can pull or push the slide, release, hold, whatever, up, and your gun will do this. From here, you can see, I'll move my white shirt back in front of it, you can see that there are no rounds, even when I hold it up like this, there is nothing in there. So, this gun is clear. There's no rounds in it, and if you were to pull the trigger, it doesn't fire. Now, I want to show you one thing that has to do with where you hold your finger. I'll come around to this side. Finger up here. I know it may feel like, well, I don't have as good of a grip on the gun because I can't use my index finger. Believe it or not, you have a lot more grip with that finger than what you think. But the reason why you don't want it down here, or you don't want it in the trigger well, or around it, on it, is because if you go to pull the slide back and you clamp down hard on it, you can accidentally fall off. And if you notice, when this trigger is depressed, no, that's not talking about sadness, when it's down, that means that the firing pin has fired, and if there was a round in the chamber, it would have fired. So, doing my best to give the example, if you go to pull it and you're pulling too hard, depending on where your finger would land in that process, you can actually accidentally fire a round if you're doing that. If you're trying to gain leverage off of that. Or if you're holding it down here and you try to pull it like that, you can hear it. That little clicking noise is the sound of the firing pin. And if it were to already be in place and it gets pulled prematurely, it will fire. Sometimes we have a tendency of skipping over rules. We have a tendency of forgetting things. But when you own a firearm, one thing you need to be very, very familiar with, very, recitable, even if you're not somebody that can, verbatim recite something, you need to know the concepts that are full rules of universal gun safety. So, for everybody out there that is a new owner as of recently, personally, glad to have you, especially if you're picking up a gun to protect your family during what may be uncertain times ahead. Do your best diligence to learn as much as you can about your gun. I know in some places it's difficult to actually go out and fire and live rounds through the gun right now. But when you can, or if you still can, if you've just picked up a gun for the first time, get the cheaper target rounds, go out there and at least know the recoil. Because it will make the difference between you shooting and hitting a target and shooting and missing a target. God bless.